Legion Season 3, which is also the final season of Legion. This will be a spoiler review. I have a review up on my blog right now, soundingbettermyhead.com. It's pretty spoiler free. There might be a couple tidbits in there that are spoilery, but for the most part, it's pretty clean. Otherwise, go ahead and watch this if you don't care about spoilers. I went ahead and gave this season a 2.5 out of 5. It was decent. Nothing really jumped out. I mean, nothing really grabbed me overall. It wasn't like a must-watch. I thought it was definitely an improvement over Season 2. I think Season 2 was a little messy. Season 1 I still think was phenomenal and one of the best seasons ever of any superhero show I think I've ever seen. I think one of the problems with Season 2 was that you basically took our hero, David, and he was basically at odds with his friends and the rest of the Division 3 and Sid and who's his girlfriend. And by the end of the season, they all turned on him and said, you know what, you're a bad guy. And they kind of go separate ways. And it's just like, you want to see all your characters like together when they're supposed to be friends and families like that. So it was a little bit of a downer. And then this season, they're still kind of at odds. Division 3 is still coming after David. David's realistically got one mission. He wants to go back in time and change the past to keep him from ever becoming possessed by the Shadow King and ruining his life. What is cool about this is one of the most famous storylines with Legion in the comics is the Age of Apocalypse storyline, where David goes back in time and he decides to kill Magneto before he became a villain because he feels Magneto ruined Professor X's dream of humans and mutants living side by side in harmony, basically. And he tried to kill Magneto and he accidentally killed his own father. So when Professor X died, it just completely changed the timeline. So unfortunately, the show couldn't get anything like that, doing anything remotely close to an Age of Apocalypse. But I think there's a nod with him going back in time and him interacting with his father that it kind of goes towards his story a little bit as far as this show's going to go. This season, I think, was hurt. There wasn't a lot of character development. I think that's really why you kind of come back to see, the characters usually bring you back in a lot of these shows and you care what happens to them. That's why I love S.H.I.E.L.D. so much, because I'm so invested in the characters after all these years. You really get emotionally involved with what happens to them. Legion, it's already so kind of trippy to begin with, and then the character development is like so light. It just doesn't help. Legion himself, David, who actually does call himself Legion this season, which is cool. He said he's just basically a spoiled brat, and he masquerades as this real calm, benevolent figure. He's got his little cult that he's taking care of, but they're just there to feed his ego and make him feel good about himself. And some of them are there to, for his end goal of, rebooting his life. And you really don't give a shit what happens to any of them. And I said, he's definitely what you would call a classic villain. He's someone that thinks he's a hero, thinks he's doing the right thing, and everything's justified because of it. I mean, to the point he starts murdering people because he figures it doesn't matter because he's going to undo the timeline. Another thing about David, I thought his powers were a little bit inconsistent. Like, one minute he could be virtually a god and can do anything, and then later on he's not. Doesn't seem really all that powerful, and it doesn't take that much to really get one over on him. Probably the biggest character arc this season would be Sid. First we first meet her, she's pretty ruthless. She's willing to gun down David and murder, cold blood more or less, to stop him. And she's so hurt at what he did to her, which it makes sense. He essentially date raped her. But again, she doesn't get a lot to do. She has a nice moment when she meets supposedly a past version of herself, and they have their heart-to-heart. But her big moment is when she gets to relive her life in the astral plane, and she really doesn't feel like she becomes that different a person. She just seems like she's just a little bit more confident, a little bit more focused on what she wants. It didn't seem like it rebooted her as much as they act like it was going to. Really didn't get a chance to see her even use her powers that much. Maybe off the top of my head once I remember her using them, and that's about it. Shadow King had a decent role, and he was interesting because his character was a total villain when we met him. He did some horrible stuff, and they implied he did a lot of other really bad stuff over the last couple of years. And then this season, they push him off as he's redeemed, that he's a hero. And in the end, it basically ends up like that. But it's just, he's done so much bad, it's hard to really buy it. And we also get to meet the past version of him, who was supposed to be purely evil. And we get hints of it, but not quite enough to like let us know how bad he was. And also, he's another one that goes back and forth. Supposedly, he's almost on the power level of David, and rarely shows it. I mean, this is a guy that supposedly died, and his consciousness was so powerful, and his body was so powerful. They both stayed alive past death, and they had to bury his body, deep underground. His body still caused everyone around it to go crazy, and you never got that feeling that he was ever that powerful again once you get reunited. Even the past version wasn't that powerful. But he said the actor did a great job. He could be likable, he could be slimy. He's just really ambiguous. He's kind of a wild card most of the season. But really, other than those, all the returning characters got the shaft. Katanomi, last season he died, but they saved his consciousness. It was in their mainframe. This season they downloaded him into like a replica body, and he didn't have a lot to do. His personality was so different now because he's basically just their mainframe computer. And he just really didn't do much. It was almost pointless to have him in it. Carrie and Carrie had some okay moments. They each had at least a couple of months to shine, whether it's female Carrie kicking butt or male Carrie, doing a little bit of slapstick, doing a little bit of science stuff. They flipped the script on him last season where their powers switched, and the male Carrie could go into the female Carrie now, but she was kind of stuck always in the real world. There was really no other twist to it this time. It looked like it's back to him being able to, go inside of her or her go inside of him. It looks like they now have a choice of which one they want to do, but it kind of came out of nowhere. Poor Clark from Division 3, he really didn't do anything. He was just kind of the background. He had one moment where he could have shined, where his husband had his memory stolen by David, and they really didn't play off very much, and then they just threw him out in space and killed him. So he wasn't a big addition. Melanie and Oliver were taken off the main cast altogether. They had that one episode, which was pretty cool for the most part, although they were fairly different than their normal selves. They were kind of living like a weird fantasy version of themselves, and then that's all we saw of them. We get into new characters. I thought Switch was decent. She had an interesting power for the time travel. They had a unique way of showing it. She overall had a pretty cool look. She had a weird backstory. There was definitely something weird between her and her father. This whole weird thing about him and robots, and they never really explained it. In the end, we find out her and her father are both some type of four-dimensional being, and this left a lot of weird loose ends with her whole story. And for the most part of those episodes, she just kind of did nothing except for try to help David, and then she'd just get really tired and her teeth would fall out some more, and that's about it. David's mom, Gabriel, she was just okay. I mean, she had overall she seemed likable, but her whole thing was that she had a mental illness, and her mom had it, and her grandma had it. She was worried about it, and her whole character was just defined about being worried about being mentally ill, and that's all she really did for the most part. Basically, the standout for new additions, and really I thought the standout character to me all season was Professor X. Just obviously I like the character from the X-Men, but we get to see a young Professor X. A little sad to see we never got to see him later on. We never got to see him bald in the wheelchair, or any kind of hint towards the X-Men really. But we basically see Professor X. He's still a little. He knows his powers, but he's not like an expert at them, and he's a little uncertain about things. He's a little bit more vulnerable. And at first, we only saw him for one episode, and that was it. And I was a little disappointed. That's all we were going to get. But he does come back for the final couple episodes, and we see hints of that more compassionate leader, teacher, Professor X that we know and love. And I thought those episodes were pretty fun, seeing him interact with his son. So overall, that was a pretty cool addition to the show. I thought he's a fair addition to the Xavier legacy. I mean, he's still nowhere near as good as Patrick Stewart or McAvoy, but he was a decent addition. The overall story was, like I said, pretty simple. David wants to go back in time and keep himself from being possessed, and then he changes it to him just trying to kill the Shadow King. And it was okay. There was some decent twists throughout. I think the best addition to the storyline were the Time Eaters, or the Time Demons. They looked a little bit silly, but they were creepy enough and dangerous enough that they're actually pretty scary when they showed up. Later on, like the final episode, they were able to finally make contact with them physically, and they're pretty easy to take out once you could hit them, but normally they were so hard to hit. But they said they were pretty freaky. As far as the ending to the season, it was a little bit anticlimactic. We were expecting this big battle with Xavier and Legion taking on the two different Farouks, and David had his little thing, which was okay. Ended like an oddly placed musical number, and then Xavier ended up getting a beer basically with the older Farouk and squashing their beef. And then everything was basically wrapped up in a nice little bow. You know, history was going to get rebooted. They kind of ignored both the Carries. They never said, "Hey, you guys, this is going to happen to you." You know, because Switch pointed out, she pointed out that Gabriel and Sid both had some, you know, divine futures kind of coming at them, but they never said anything about the Carries. And then they said they just kind of vanished, and that was it. Another thing about the show's always been visually interesting. There's so many trippy things they put out there, and this cool way that they tell stories. But this season didn't seem like it really enhanced the plot that much. It was like some really cool things to look at. I like the way they did some stuff, but it wasn't like, it felt like it was just showing off. This is all fluff. It didn't feel like it really enhanced the story like they did a lot of times in the, you know, especially season 1. That's really got to say about the season. I'm gonna whip through some notes here. A couple things that jump out at me that I thought were interesting. Again, even with the first episode, there's a lot of random visuals that didn't seem like they added all that much. They just kind of looked freaky, like the giant pig and that David's cult and the big tunnel that she had to crawl through. I did like the musical number though. I thought that was pretty cool. I like the way they did it, and the tunnel did look cool. It was just kind of there to look, you know, trippy. They glossed over a lot of stuff. Like at one point, David, you know, got really angry and his energy flow turned red, and everyone got crazy for a minute, and then it just went back to normal. And I should have brought this up with my characters. Another character that had a weird story was Lenny. As it is, she's a strange character. She's basically her body was basically reborn out of David's sister, and her mind was put back in there, but it never really was Lenny's mind. It was almost like David and/or Farouk's interpretation of Lenny. Because I don't think either one of them ever like absorbed her consciousness before she died in the first episode of season 1. So it's just weird, but it was interesting seeing her kind of wanting something for herself, and she's got a baby on the way, and she really wanted to have her own life before she, you know, ends up basically killing herself. But it just seemed like they were on the cusp of doing something really cool with her, and they just kind of just didn't. I like the callback with Xavier meeting Gabriel at the mental institution, and they had played a lot of the same stuff that David and Sid did when they were there, and playing the same song. So I thought that was a cool callback. Interesting how David seemed like he influenced things that he basically caused his mom to kind of go crazy, and it's almost implied that's the way it happened the first time. Like he's the reason things went wrong. But then again, the fact that he did change time in the end seemed like maybe it was something different. I don't know. Time travel was always funky. Pretty cool. I like the little time between time where it was almost kind of like a still photo and the characters could barely move. I thought that was like a cool looking thing. And the way they changed it to like, you know, aspect ratio. And they did a lot of other fun stuff. Like I like just with the time meter showing up, you see stuff like rusting and disintegrating. At one point, they show a scene from the FX show The Shield, kind of almost like time got messed up and you're watching the wrong show. Definitely liked all the Davids and David's head. You know, that's what made him Legion in the comics, and now we get to see a version of it here. I love the design of the room with all the doors where all the Davids would come out and confront whoever was in the middle. I thought that looked really visually pretty cool. Liked the moment where David's in the astral plane and he's stuck in a straitjacket by Farouk, and he finally breaks free, and the straitjacket was actually Farouk. I thought that looked really cool. I like how when Switch basically leveled up to, you know, almost her true form, all the teeth she was losing all this time, we were told she actually just lost her baby teeth, and that now she had her wisdom teeth. I just really like the way they did that. There's really not a ton else to say. I don't want to go on for too long about the show. It was only 8 episodes, so I got some more reviews up on my blog. Like I said, soundedbettermyhead.com. I got my comics on there. If you want to check those out, that's cool. Otherwise, thanks for watching.